You can try, like
Okay.
in the nutshell.
Well, so for the sake of the recording, so and even where we have one more colleague here, so I think I can introduce myself as well one more time. So thanks for coming, everyone. I really appreciate that you've found the time for this online lecture, and hopefully it will be as useful for you as it was for your colleagues in spring. And again, regarding the questions policy, please do write down your questions. I really appreciate after the lecture if we can have a Q&A session. And perhaps one more thing about my question policy, there is no bad question. You know, all questions are relevant, all questions are good, and all questions can be sort of pointers and triggers of other interesting topics and questions. So do not hesitate to ask me anything. Okay, so I think important question to start with here: why you should care about today's topic, which is UX design and things related to it. And when I ask my students this question, they answer me with a few interesting sort of points. Someone says, "Oh, it's because I like digital design in general, and I'm sort of interested in another fields." Someone just, is very practical and says, well, I think it pays well, so, why not do it? Which is a completely valid response. I have nothing against that. Someone says, well, I think it's a new field, or still rather a new field, and I would love to learn about it, perhaps decide whether I should switch my careers or not. Let's say from programming to UX design, or from graphic design to UX design. And someone says, and I really like this response, someone says, I believe that I'm both creative and analytical person, and I believe that the UX design field sort of provides me with this opportunity to employ and use both of my sort of skill sets and abilities. And others just cut to the chase and say, well, because I like doing personas and wireframes and prototypes, which are some of the main methods or tools that you use in your UX design profession or work. And so they already know about UX design, and they know why they like it. And sure, these are really legitimate answers, but I like to be a little bit more sort of evangelist-like, and try to say that, of course, this is valid, but perhaps the most important for me regarding the UX design is that it has the ability to change the world, because obviously we are surrounded by technologies all around us, and I mean, our relationships are mediated by technologies, even especially during the coronavirus crisis. Ordering food, ordering drinks is mediated by technologies, and if we can just design our technologies in a better way, perhaps it can really change our relationship, not to other people, to services, products, but also to the society itself. So there's a question for you, if you do not mind. I'm interested why you think that you should care about the UX design, and if you do not care about the UX design, you can tell us why you think that you do not care. Victor, if you can just go through your students, and if anyone is willing to share his or her opinions or even experiences about the UX design. So why does it matter to you? Victor, we cannot hear you, I suppose.
My bad. So the question is, the first question is on me, or just like should I ask the students, or?
Yeah, it's. I mean, we have already talked about what you think about the UX design. So I'm interested, perhaps right now, more in your students' opinions.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just every time I'm just pointing on the Miroslav, you know about it. So I will start with him. And are you prepared now, Miroslav, for the answer?
I mean, I can figure out always something to say, that's for sure. I mean, what do I think about UX and UI in general is something as a wayfinding for the user. Something like if you go in a car on the street, you have also those wayfinding information, where to go, how to go, and it has to be intuitive for the user, for the driver of the car. So I see it as a logic strategy of placement of components, so or obviously all the grid structure, so
Mhm.
the user is kind of guided as effectively as possible in anything, kind of like it can be a website, it can be also a new way of navigation, right?
Mhm.
In artificial, not artificial, always augmented reality as well, right? Like what Google is doing right now with the wayfinding as well. It has to be intuitive. But yeah, this is what I think about UX and UI. Like it's a wayfinding for people.
Um, Great answer, thank you. So basically, if I can summarize it, you do believe, or you at least see right now the UX design as a sort of way to navigate users through some kind of environment, be it a physical environment like urbanism, architecture, or of course the digital environment, websites, applications, and so on and so forth, which is a
Yeah.
big part of what UX design tries to do, certainly. So thanks for the answer. I'm sure we will come back to this topic later on. So thanks. Anyone else?
I mean, I would like to say that I think that UX design is just as important as UI like design, because usually people think that that it's really important for the website to, for example, look appealing. But I think at the same time, when you enter the website and when you can find something like within 1 minute, you just like usually close the website. So I will say that like people, I'm not sure, like I can't say about all the designers, but I feel like even me in the beginning, I was kind of like I didn't thought that UX is important as it is actually. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. We could hear perhaps the distinction or the similarities between the UX and UI, which is also something that has been talked about a lot in the UX design sort of community and field. And it's a tricky subject because the first question that comes to our mind is there any difference, or what's the nature of difference between the user interface and UX design? And again, that's something that we will certainly discuss later on. Okay, thanks again for sharing your opinion. Thanks a lot.
Anybody else would like to?
Perhaps last one, and we can just move on.
Can I?
Uh-huh.
Sure. Hello.
Hello. I think the UX part is focused on more psychology things, because designers should be concentrate on the user experience, and then how they want to look for their desire or their want. So yeah.
Okay,
So
thanks.
it's more psychology things, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing your relevant opinion. Yeah, definitely the psychology part plays a role in the UX, and someone would say, I mean, perhaps it's the biggest thing regarding the UX, because the user experience is something that we have. It's sort of perceiving the world, experiencing the world, and it has to do something with people. So just UX design cannot be about technical things themselves. So we have to take into account the person and how the person sort of, what kind of, let's say, hobbies, goals, tasks the person want to pursue, want to achieve. So definitely psychology, or perhaps to put it more generally, knowing something about how people behave, how people sort of work is definitely important, and the nature of experience is something what is experience, why it matters. So definitely, thanks a lot. Well, so if I can come back to my presentation, I try to keep it simple, but at the same time, with the simplicity to go or to build later on the let's say more profound explanations. And I usually start explaining the UX design with this important shift in design, not only in digital design, but I would say design and architecture in general. The shift from the how question, how to do things, how to build things, how to program, how to design, what kind of software application should I use, to the why question. And the why question is, I would say, more profound because it tends to ask, it tends to inquire about perhaps even the most important things about your life, why you do things, why you in the first place choose software applications, why you go to digital design and not to architecture. And let's say regarding your clients, you as a UX designer could ask, do you really need, or why do you need a new website? Do you really need a new website, or maybe the problem with your business is in the visual identity? Perhaps the problem is completely else. Let's say in the management or in how you treat and deal with your clients. So you perhaps even don't need a new visual identity or website. So the why question is something that I believe is what the UX design is about. Of course, then if you agree on that, then you have to ask later. Okay, so how do we research the why question? So what I would like to do during this presentation is to use my personal experiences, what I have been through, where I worked, to sort of use my evolution, my journey, to tell you something about the evolutionary journey of the UX design field itself. And just briefly to add something to the nice introduction of Victor at the beginning. So I do study as a PhD student philosophy. I'm very much interested in technology, mind, psychology, cognitive science, and media theory. I teach as an external teacher at the New Media Studies department at Charles University. Yeah, that's what I research. And my primary focus is how technology shapes our mind and behavior. And this is perhaps interesting even more to you. When I research media theory, when I write and talk about interface, I really see it, let's say metaphorically, but you will see hopefully that it's not a metaphor, it's even more concrete than just a metaphor. I see an interface in general as a sort of window to be it a physical or digital universe that helps to hide the unnecessary complexity so that users can use your products. I mean, to put it simply, you do not want your users to think about transistors, memories, and processors in your computers. You just want to use your nice application or your nice website, and that's what interface does. It hides the complexity and it lets the user just enjoy what you as a designer want them to use them, to users to use. Yeah, I've been in the software industry for some time, and I worked at, I would say, all kinds of positions in the software team, from being a tester to really being a UX designer. And my last commercial job before I switched to being a full-time PhD student was for a bank where I was a senior UX designer. As Victor said at the beginning, I set up a small design studio, so I'm in touch with the field, and it has one big advantage for me compared with working for the Czech banking house, is that I have much more freedom to do whatever I want to do, what kind of projects I want to work on. Okay, so Where did I start? Let's say at around 2005 and 2008, for most of you, it's sort of prehistoric times of software and design. I work as a software tester. And at this time, if you were a part of a software team or design team, even though there wasn't anything like design teams, you could see people with these labels, with these kind of positions. So project managers, analysts, programmers, coders, graphic designers. So there was no UX design position. And I deliberately put the graphic designer at the very bottom of this list, because during these times, graphic designers really were used, and I can even say exploited, for just making things nice. It was about just making nice, colorful buttons, and that was probably it. So it means that it was a top-down sort of management of projects. It was project managers and analysts who decided what the project will be about. Then it was a programmer who started working on the project, coder perhaps layouts, and only afterwards graphic designers sort of have something to say about the project. Sometimes you could see that graphic designer work in tandem with the coder, and coder just perhaps after the graphic design was created, coded the layout. But otherwise, graphic designer, was really at the bottom of the project hierarchy. Later on, 2010, I switched my position and I moved to being more productive, more creative regarding designing, creating projects. And at this time, maybe some of you, either from reading history or having your own experiences, some of you know that at this time, what was really important in the digital design was something that seems completely bizarre from today's perspective, and it is that the websites and projects had to be valid, HTML valid, and I always say that it is something like if you judge poetry or literature based on the grammatical structure of the story rather than on the story itself. And it's a similar thing in the digital design, that people were much more interested in whether the code behind your digital products is very, rather than whether the product works for users, or whether the product satisfies the goals and tasks of the users. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes you could hear during the conversations in your team that there is this requirement for user-friendly websites or user-friendly applications, and that it has to be usable. But honestly, at least from my own experience, it was just a label from managers that they had this requirement, that it has to be user-friendly, but no one really knew what it actually means, and how actually you achieve user-friendly websites, user-friendly digital products. And lastly, from time to time, we did do prototyping, but it was mostly after your client said that he or she doesn't like the graphic design and the final product. So you had to go back to the board, and you had two choices. Either you created the product from scratch, or you tried to use these very early prototyping applications where you just sort of tinkered with your already existing graphic design, and then instead of sharing the new graphic design, you shared some kind of prototypes that were not so graphic design, but it was more than just paper, pencil and paper. So there was prototyping, there was user friendliness of design of your products, but mostly it was just buzzwords, labels that no one really knew how to use and why to use even. And just to give you a broader context of this era, this is the time when Google looked something like that. The Apple website looked like that. This is the homepage of New York Times from that era. As you can see, the typography was not really the biggest strength of the websites in general, I should say. Seznam, that's CZ, and this used to be your website.
Oh.
I think it looks like this right now as well, no?
It looks
Okay.
better, kind of.
Okay, so there may be two possibilities. Either no one really dared to update it, or the design at that time was already so timeless, so there is no need to update it. I mean, it's up to you to decide which option is correct. I will stay neutral. Okay, so let's move on the timeline again to 2010. From 2010 to 2013, I started working for the Mango Web studio, and it's still existing studio. Maybe some of you know the people working for Mango Web, and are a small studio. It's not a big behemoth, you know, a big commercial company. They still keep it small, and they are very agile, very creative. One of the last, let's say, projects I can remember they worked on was the redesign of the newspaper respect.cz website. You can just check it out later on if you want. And I work for there, but surprisingly for you, maybe, there was still no mentioning of UX or UX design. It was 2013, the late 2013. And just let's jump straight to 2017. And suddenly, I work as a senior UX designer for Hypoteční banka, for the Czech banking house. And yeah, that's me. It's from webcam. We used to do these streamings and recordings of our design sessions, and here I'm explaining to my colleagues what was it? A new prototype for a new application, basically. And we really did a lot of drawing, more drawings. And just to mention something on these drawings, you can see the pink triangles, and it was one of the methods we used a lot. It's called dot method. Basically, we had these wireframes, basically drawings of potential components or parts of the websites. And then at the end of the design session, we sort of voted with these pink triangles what components, what parts of the website we like. And the more triangles you had, it basically meant that the more people like the idea. So that's a good way to evaluate your creative design session and the ideas that you will create during it. Okay, so from drawings we then move to prototypes. It's still not a complete design. It's in grayscale, colors. You may see a few colors there just to stress the important actions or buttons. And it doesn't really matter what the application was for, and basically it was an internet application for managing mortgages. Yeah, that's the way to put it. And then we did start working on the full-scale graphic design of the application, and this is basically it. And I have to mention something that happened during the UX research that I did for this specific project, and I named it the paper incident story. And basically, it was a banking house, so we had a lot of money to do the UX research properly. I mean, to do it as textbooks would require you to do the UX research. So even before any prototyping, any wireframing, what I did was go to the branches, the individual branches of the bank, and I did a user research. Basically, I created a questionnaire beforehand and I asked the workers there, because it was the application was supposed to be used by these workers. So it was an internal application for workers to manage mortgages and clients in a more fluent, agile way. And so I asked the workers at these individual branches how they use the current application and whether they follow the official rules that were created and designed not by designers but analysts and project managers. And basically there was this official documentation where the workers were supposed to follow, step by step rules if they go for holidays, let's say. So the rules were supposed to help them decide what to do when they go for holidays and how to share information about the clients while they are out on holidays. And what I basically researched and what I found out was that no one was using these official rules. No one was using them. Instead, and this is really crazy. I mean, it was crazy for all my colleagues, and I was really surprised and glad that I found out what they did instead. These, let's say, from 30 to 50 years old women working at the branch, they used a normal piece of paper, and when they went for a holiday, they basically wrote down on the piece of paper the most important information about the clients, and the paper was shared around the branch. So that's how they did it.
Nice.
And I mean, for me, it was a revelation, because I told myself, well, that's amazing. Even, the managers and analysts, they really went berserk, because, there were problems with the privacy, because if someone found out about the paper, all the clients information, that would be not good. But for me, it was a revelation, and I was really, laughing at it, but I was motivated to take advantage of this information that I found out during the UX research as much as possible. And basically after the end of the UX research session, or the part of the project, I had this meeting where I presented my findings, and I suggested, well, here it is how workers actually do it. How about sort of being, inspired by how the potential users and the workers do it, and how about using this information, and how about implementing that into the new application. And well, surprisingly enough for me, the analysts and managers were for it, and they agreed, even though there were some kind of modifications of the process, because it had to be, especially regarding the privacy and so on. But in the end, the final design of the application implemented a lot. Let's say, I don't know, 60% of what I found out during the UX research, and from what the workers actually were doing with the paper. So, just a small anecdote of how the UX research, if you have time to do it, if you have money and free expenditure to do it, so sometimes you do find interesting stuff that you can implement to new designs, new products. So if you can remember, there were 4 years before the era I worked for the Mango Web, and between working for the Mango Web and my job at the bank. And the question is, what happened during those 4 years? In 2013, there was no mentioning of the UX design. But suddenly, after 4 years, I was working as a senior UX designer. So something must have happened. And That's one of my mantras. Usually I tend to research what things are to help me to do these things, in a better way, properly. So to know what the UX design is help me to be a better UX designer. So I set out to research this topic, what happened during these 4 years. And one of the tools I used for my research was this tool. I'm just curious, do you know what this is? Just from the slide, how it looks like?
Kind of Excel, right?
Yeah.
This is Google research.
Maybe user of internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tool called the Google Trends, and everybody can use it. It's a tool offered to you by Google, and what it is for is basically you can type into it terms, and the Google will tell you how much the term was searched for during some kind of period that you choose, period you are interested in. And so I typed in these terms, UX design, UX designer, user experience designer. And you can see that people didn't search for these terms up until, let's say, 2010, 2011, something around this era, this period. Yeah, and if you look at this at this part of the graph, you can see that the UX design really shoot it to the stars. Something really happened at around 2013. Different graph, but the same tool, Google Trends. I just put into the search field another term, interaction design. Because just to tell you beforehand, it was the term that was actually used when talking about how to design for users. So the website or the application is user friendly and useful and so on and so forth. And again, you can see that the interaction design was searched for a lot, but at around 2013, more or less, something happened and interaction design went down and UX design went up, as well as UX designer. This term went up. One more graph, the same tool, but I added human-computer interaction, which is again something that, I mean, it's a whole field. Human interaction field is something that since 1980s studies the way people interact with technologies and computers. And again, the same story, at around, I don't know, 2012, probably a little bit earlier, the human-computer interaction, the term and the topic in Google is going down, and UX design is going up. So the question is, what happened in 2013 or at around 2013? And my answer, I'm not saying it's the only answer, but my answer is that this happened. And this happened. And this happened. And this one. Basically, all these 4 books were published in 2013 or during the year of 2013. And I do believe that it influenced people a lot, even though, of course, these books build upon the knowledge from different fields, from the field of interaction design, human-computer interaction, but they really pushed the terminology of UX design, user experience, to the front of the whole design community. And I would like to focus on this specific book because in 2013 it was already 2nd or even 3rd edition. And I mean, it might have been even 4th edition. I'm not sure right now. Yeah, definitely it wasn't 1st or even 2nd edition. So this book has already been read by people, but it was only in 2013 that it was associated much more with UX design as such. And the book was written by this guy, He's Don Norman, and to me, and I would say even to other people, I'm not just the only one, he is the most important person that really, is related to almost everything that is UX design related. And I call him jokingly a gateway drug to UX design and human-computer interaction, cognitive science, psychology, design theory, and so on and so forth. Because he really is that interdisciplinary, and he really did publish a lot of books related to all these topics. So, John Norman, very brief biography of him. I tend not to talk about people and their lives so much, but I think he's such an important person that it makes sense to tell you a bit about his life. So first and foremost, he worked at Apple as an UX architect. Just see that it's not UX designer, it's UX architect. That's an interesting point. In 1993, it was actually him who coined the term the UX design, and it was still while he was at Apple. And originally he's trained as a psychologist, cognitive scientist. So he wasn't originally a designer as such. He applied the knowledge from science, from psychology, how people behave, how people think, to design. He published a lot of books, and he started in the human-computer interaction field, which, as I told you previously, has been here with us since at least 1980s. And yeah, I would say that the evolution of his work, of his thinking, really reflects the way the whole UX design field developed. So these are the fields that he has been involved in. And you may have heard about these words as well: user-centered design, human-centered design, design thinking, UI design. And I would say they are related to the UX design. Sometimes they are really synonymous. For some people, they mean the same. But if we just step back and if you look at this slide from the bird's eye perspective, we can say that they all try to do the same thing. They try to create, or they try to basically make design or redesign the design in such a way that the products are user-friendly, and they really help people do things they need to do. Yes, there are other terms you may have heard about. So the human-computer interaction is what really has been here since 1980s, and I will just go through it. You can perhaps later on, I can send you the presentation. You can read it more. Basically, it's an academic field that started very thoroughly as a science and tried to design products in a very strange way. And here's why. People working in a human-computer interaction field, they thought that the best way to design things is to monitor, is to check how people write, how fast people write, how fast people work with computers. And basically the good design meant that the faster you can do your work, the better. So there was no mentioning of experience. There was no mentioning of, user friendliness. It was really that simple. The faster you can do tasks you need to do, the better design. And the human-computer interaction during 1980s and even 90s thought about human beings in a very strange way, but up to this year, it's still prevalent in some corners of human-computer interaction, even cognitive science. And here's the image of human being, how they thought about humans. They thought about humans as a basically slower, worse computer. That we have memories, we have processors, and sort of we perceive something, something inside our head will deal with the data, and then we behave in a certain way. So that's how human-computer interaction thought about humans. And one more thing, and you can even see it from this image. They thought about interaction with computers and interaction with technologies as being just stuck with computers on your tables, basically. That's how they thought about using computers. Then there was interaction design. I mean, there still is interaction design, don't get me wrong. And it started at around 1980s, 1970s at very important companies and research centers like Xerox PARC and Stanford Research Institute and of course Apple. And it was, I mean, the creation of this interaction design field was a reaction to the previously mentioned human-computer interaction field. And people who started this movement of interaction design, they really wanted to do design much more practically, much more designerly oriented than the human-computer interaction. Meaning that they were much more interested in the actual people and actual lives, and they thought that, you know, designing products just based on how quickly people type on keyboards and how quickly people can do tasks, it's too limited. It's too, you know, it really looks at people like computers, like robots, like machines. So interaction designers thought there is much more to humans, obviously. You know, we have lives, we have, you know, interests, hobbies, we have emotions as well, which human-computer interaction didn't take into account that much. And the interaction design field was very much popularized by Alan Cooper, which is a person to look for if you want to know more about interaction design. And especially his book About Face, which was published, the first edition was published in 1995. And at that time, software design or user interface design were still very much obscure things, obscure fields or subjects, because if you talked about designing software, usually what you meant at that time was programming or engineering side of projects. But of course, what changed that was the whole internet web era, and after the web, you know, really became mainstream, new positions emerged, such as information designer, information architect, user experience strategist, interaction designer, but still no user experience designer, interestingly enough. So this is the book About Face. I really recommend reading the book, at least parts of it, because it's very much it's both theoretical but very much practical. So you will get, you know, the best of both sides of looking at this type of you know interests. And the third edition really for the first time mentioned in the theoretical literature the term user experience design. And Alan Cooper for the first time was sort of describing the UX design as something that overlaps, you know, between giving form to things, which is usually the job of industrial designers, graphic designers, content, which is a job of, you know, copywriters, and the content, you know, needs not to be just the text. It can be sound, you know, video, and so on and so forth. And behavior, which is what, according to Alan Cooper and others, was the task of interaction designers, interaction design as such, which means making the things interactive and designing the interactions. And in the eyes of Alan Cooper, user experience design is really not that new. You know, the UX for him is just all this together. And perhaps you may have someone who sort of coordinate, you know, people doing form, people designing, writing or making content, and people designing interaction and behavior. So according to Alan Cooper, at least that's what user experience design is about. So here, that's him. He worked for Microsoft for a long time, and he was actually the very first person who introduced the ideas of goals instead of tasks, personas, which you may have heard already about, and the iterative goal-oriented design process. And I just try to go very briefly through these ideas that he introduced with his colleagues. So the goals instead of tasks, what is it? What it means? Well, Alan Cooper in About Facebook says, well, if you look at your goals, you know, it may be you want to eat pizza. That's your goal. And there might be tasks of, let's say, mobile applications, or even not, you know, it needs not to be an application. It can be just, you know, that you really go outside to a shop, buy a pizza. So, you know, there are various ways to achieve your goal to eat pizza. But of course, Alan Cooper sort of mentions that the way to order pizza or to get pizza is completely different in 2020 and 1920, of course. So he says, well, while tasks change a lot, goals are relatively stable. And that's why you should focus on in your design work on, you know, getting to know goals of people rather than tasks. Okay, that's an example of persona. Just very briefly, what persona is. I think you may have heard about it already, but just, you know, for those who have not, persona, according to Alan Cooper and others, is a fictitious fictitious account of a person, which, however, is based on real data. So it means, let's say, coming back to the project I was working on for when I was at the bank. I was designing something that was supposed to be used by mostly women from 30 to 50 years old of age. And I created a persona that was, you know, filled with completely fictitious data. So the person did not exist. However, the person was, let's say, of 45 years old. So the age, even though it was a fictitious person, really had some connection to the real data, because we knew that we are designing for mostly women from 30 to 50 years old. And what the persona is for? In my opinion, or at least how I think about it, persona should help you to empathize with your potential future users. So every time you design new things during your design process, you should always have, at least at the back of your mind, of your head, you know, these personas, so that you can be inspired, you can empathize with the potential users, and you can ask yourself, you know, should I really design this kind of form, this kind of, I don't know, a component in your application, in your website, or even if you are an architect, should I design, you know, this type of part of the building this way, not that way? Should the doors should be, you know, that large, and so on and so forth. And you can always potentially answer these questions based on your personas. Of course, personas are not scientific, you know, tool. You know, it doesn't mean that you will design your products, you know, the best way possible. It's a tool. It's a helpful tool that helps you to empathize with your users. Okay, just very briefly regarding the goal-oriented process. We said that goals are really what should matter to you as a designer, not tasks, but goals. And Alan Cooper says that you should have some kind of process how to work when you are designing. And this is the process. He suggests, you know, starting from the research, doing personas, doing prototyping and wireframing, and only later on should you really, you know, sit down in front of your, I don't know, graphic design applications, and only later you should design your websites and applications. Okay. This is again something that Alan Cooper stresses, that within your design process you should try as much as possible to create design systems. Meaning, it is highly likely that in your applications, you know, projects in general, that there will be parts that will be similar, and you can reuse them. So you can sort of create your own design language that you will use for, you know, building the product that you are building. And perhaps lastly, what Alan Cooper and others stress is that before you open your graphic design applications, you should really do your research and then try to, you know, implement your abstract ideas to more concrete, you know, forms, which is wireframing. And you can actually do a first even user research with this wireframing, because you can sit down with your potential users and you can try, you know, ask them whether, you know, they understand your wireframe, they understand what the application, you know, should do. So that's still at the intersection of human-computer interaction, interaction design, but we haven't talked much about UX as such. So let's go back to John Norman. I told you that he's a really, you know, big shot, big guy who you know, is related to almost anything about UX design. And I told you at previous slides that he coined the term UX design. And to my, in my opinion, it's, you know, it's always better to get back to the source to learn how people, you know, meant using these terms. And what Don Norman says is that he wanted to change how Apple worked. You know, they were already pretty good at graphic design, industrial design, but John Norman thought that what they could improve is the overall experience of using, you know, their products. Meaning, they should focus more on the interior design of the shops, or, you know, they should focus more on the customer service, because this is really also we can call it touch points. These are also touch points that people interact with, customers interact with. So in my opinion, we can say that Don Norman wanted to take a more holistic or more systemic approach to, you know, to designing, to making your customers happy. But as he says, the term has been used and misused ever since. And I have a video here, and I'm not so sure whether you will hear the audio. Let me see if I can just check here whether the audio is on. Let me see. I'm sorry. Automatically join computer audio.
I think it's in the settings of Zoom.
Yeah, I believe so.
When you share, there is a little button, the button on the bottom left when you share it, but I don't know where it is. When you already share.
On the top there is view option, maybe.
Okay.
Then there is share computer.
I'll try to play it. Let me see if you can hear it.
No, we can't hear it.
Can you hear it or not?
No.
Okay.
Jakub, I will recommend you maybe just stop sharing the screen, and then when you will start sharing again, at the left bottom corner there is this option for just like you will be sharing for playing the video content. Yeah, so.
Okay, so I have to jump out of the current sharing of the screen. All right then. So I'll try that. So stop sharing, and I'll share it again. Share computer sound. I see it. Thanks a lot.
No worries.
Okay, I have to put password.
Zoom doesn't have good UX.
Okay, so yeah, so let's try again.
San Francisco. I got to ask.
Okay, it works. Perfect. So let's put it from the beginning.
Hi, I'm Angie Lee, and I'm here at the UX conference in San Francisco. I got to ask Don Norman what he thinks about the term UX.
Once upon a time, a very long time ago, I was at Apple. And we said, the experience of using these computers is weak. The experience when you first discover it, when you see it in the store, when you buy it, when you, can't fit it into the cars in this great big box, it doesn't fit into the car. And when you finally do get it home, opening the box up and, it looks scary, I don't know if I dare put this computer together. All of that is user experience. It's everything that touches upon your experience with the product, and it may not even be near the product. It may be when you're telling somebody else about it. That's what we meant when we devised the term user experience and set up what we called the user experience at Apple to try to enhance things. Now, Apple was already pretty good, so we were starting with a good product.
Yeah, I just ask you, can you watch it normally, or are there any problems, any issues with the video, Victor?
Maybe just it is having some lags, but
yeah, we get the point.
It's lagging, but let's say, I don't know, just we can use the chat, and you can send us the link, and we can tell to each other that now we will start to watch the video. It could be also possible.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I will definitely send you the video later, and so you can see it, watch it for yourself. I mean, the point is that Don Norman says that the UX design is really not about the individual products. It's not about the graphic design. It's not about the interior design, of the shops. What it really is about, according to him, and he coined the term, so we may be interested in what he has to say about UX. He mentions the word system. It's about the system. It's how all the things that we mentioned are interconnected, and it is this interconnection of applications, websites, customer service, architecture, interior design of the shops, and so on and so forth. What in the end creates the general, I mean, not the general, the individual specific user experience. So if you couldn't hear it properly, and probably you could not, but definitely I will send you the link so you can watch it for yourself. But to summarize it, it's about the system. It's about account, everything, products, services, people, things. They are parts of the whole. And what matters is also the context. It really differs when you, let's say, use a website when you sit down, in front of your computer at home, as we all do these days during the coronavirus crisis, or if you are, let's say, if you are in a hurry, you need to catch a bus, and you really need to find as quickly as possible, the way to get from the center of Prague to, I don't know, to Holešovice or something like that. So it really matters the context, because, of course, if you are in a hurry, you are in a stressful situation. You cannot pay that much attention to the application. So if you want to make a good design, and good, if you want to design for a good user experience, you should take into account that your applications will be used in vastly different scenarios and contexts. And that's why, because people can use your products, at different locations and different settings, that's why that you should, or you are at least encouraged to use methods from sociology, anthropology, ethnography to get information about these different types of context. And by the way, I think that's what basically the whole idea of human-centered design is about, that you should learn as much as possible about people, but also how they live and their goals and what they want to achieve, and how your products can help them to achieve their goals. And this is interesting, and I mean, this is perhaps the most philosophical point of my whole presentation. So, philosophically, psychologically, what it means is that experience, doesn't exist prior to interaction. The experience is being created when you use the products. So that's the first part of this point. And the second part is that experience cannot be designed, because experience is not located in your products. It's not located only in your head, in people, but experience, is created or co-created between people or humans and technology or products. So it is this interaction between those two poles where the experience actually is, or is being located. I mean, it sounds abstract and weird. I completely understand, but it really is an important point to understand, that you cannot design experience, because experience is not only in technology or in humans. It's basically created by both of them. And also the context really, changes the way the experience is changes how things are experienced. So, this is the most philosophical point of my presentation, I think. If you have any questions, and I suppose that you might have questions about this, jot that down on your paper and we can talk about it later on. There is more prosaic, more pragmatic way to show the difference, let's say, between design and user experience. You can design a nice, walk, a nice place to walk on, but people have different ways, different goals that you do not anticipate, prior. So that's why you really have to talk to users. You have to know your users, and you have to know their current goals and even possible goals, because they sooner or later they will find their own way to use your technology and your products and your designs. Okay, I talked about the UX as a system. What it means. It's a very simple thought. You as a human being, you do not live in a vacuum. You do not live, in a completely, separate space from anything else. You live in a society. You have some goals. You think in a certain way. You have hobbies. You have family. You live in the context of culture and society, and you interact with other people. Other people, have the same types of contexts they live in. Again, hobbies, they have hobbies, family, they live in a specific culture and society. And where technology comes in is that technology sort of creates, or can create at least, relationship between you, your services, products, but also with other people. So technology is a sort of medium that mediates between you, other people, and your products and services. And of course, everything, I mean, all of this happens in, again, a larger context. It happens, you know, within a society, within a culture. It happens at a specific time and specific place. And that's why the sociological, anthropological methods, you know, to get to know better your users is really important, because, of course, you design things differently for people in China and in the Czech Republic, of course. And that's why user experience design is also talked about, you know, as a sort of the holistic field that encompasses different types of fields, different types of, you know, design fields. This is a diagram that you can see a lot on the internet, and I really like it because it explains, or at least it shows. Not explains necessarily, but it shows the interconnections between various fields, various, you know, ways of thinking about design and products. So as you can see, user experience design, and I sort of agree with that, you know, can be seen as a sort of, you know, a big encompassing field that uses methods and ideas from all these different types of design fields: interaction design, information architecture, visual design, motion design, information design, and so on and so forth. And I also like this way looking at user experience design. I mean, I have mentioned several times already the word system, that we should look at things, at how we design, and at the problems that we design for, as being a part of the system. And this is a diagram that comes from the book The Stack, published in 2016 and written by a famous media theorist, Benjamin Breton. Oh, 2016, right. And even though he's not interested that much or specifically in user experience design, he does mention user experience design in his book. And the reason why is that, according to him, we can sort of see the era in which we live as a one big system. He calls the system stack, and this system is composed of from humans, you know, city, cloud, and Earth itself. And you know, it's very difficult to summarize the book in a few sentences, but basically, according to him, we live in this. We are part of this, you know, big mega structure, and the only way actually to sort of connect to different parts of, you know, this megastructure, you know, to the city, to cloud services, and even to parts of, you know, the whole planet, is through various interfaces. And please do not think about interfaces as, you know, just being screens right now. Interface in Breton and in other theoreticians basically means a way to connect to something that otherwise couldn't be seen and is hidden, and otherwise we cannot interact that easily with. So interface is a sort of something that translates, you know, sort of possibilities that are very difficult for us to perceive, you know, to see, to something that we can actually use, we can interact with. And for Benjamin Breton and others, and I really like this definition, interface is an image, or is a map. Is a map that helps us to make sense of things, of products, for, you know, even the Earth itself. And, you know, there are different ways to explain, or to explain further, this idea of interface as a map, or as a sort of window. And this is an image I really like. It is supposed to be from the book commenting on famous Renaissance architect, really a smart guy, Alberti, who was the first person who really theorized how using the grid in your window can help you to paint much better, because the scene that you are looking at will be divided into these, parts, and you can sort of check whether the part in the window is painted or drawn properly, at your desk or at your paper. Of course, there are different ways, sort of theoretical ways to, not theoretical, but even historical ways to explain what it means to think of interfaces as windows onto something or into something. The telescopes are, I like thinking about them as interfaces into the universe. So thanks to telescopes, we for the first time could see moons and other objects. The same thing with microscopes. They open up completely new worlds that we couldn't see previously. And interestingly enough, if you go back to the history of computing, so let's get back to computers. I'm curious. Do you know what this pictures or photos show us?
Supercomputer.
Okay.
This is the kind of connection the bit in the word for calling.
Yeah,
isn't it?
this is the call. Like they had to individually switch
Yeah.
cables to have different calls.
Yeah,
or
true.
houses
Yeah.
or department, I think.
I think you are all of you is partially correct, or are partially correct. This is actually how programming was done.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. It is a sort of supercomputer, even though from today's perspective, this computer, is slower than your watch, much slower than your watch. This is the first computer sort of created, designed during the World War II era. This might be even the specific computer called ENIAC, if you are interested in this kind of historical things. But anyway, you can see women doing something, disconnecting cables. And this is how you could interact. This was the only way you could interact with computers. Really physically putting cables from place to place. And that's why that's the way you program the computer. From today's perspective, it's bizarre and crazy, but this was the first interface. This was the first user interface, how you could interact with your computer.
It reminds me of that World War movie as well. The one who was able to discover all the location of the Nazis.
Oh, Alan Turing. Turing. Yeah, if you do not know anything about Alan Turing, you should definitely Google him at least, because he's one of the most important people, not only in computers, but also in World War history. But very few people know about him, about his name and what he did. And I'm really thankful to the film that at least the mainstream society can at least get to know something about him. Yeah, Alan Turing, it's definitely a person to know. But this ENIAC computer, it was created even before Alan Turing was working on his projects.
Enigma or something.
Yeah. Okay, so we jump a few years into 1960s probably, and this is the first graphic design software. And you cannot see it that easily. The person who created it is Ivan Sutherland, and he created it for his PhD thesis. And what he holds in his hand, in his right hand, is a laser pen, and with this laser pen he could draw shapes on this very primitive display. But it was a revolution. Yeah, it's sort of a proto iPad, definitely. And why this is important. the reason is, if we go back to this slide, the only way to communicate, to interface with your computer was, really physically moving cables from place to place. But in 1960s, this changed for the first time, and you could program your computer. I mean, you could change things in computer memory thanks to doing something with screen and with your laser pen. So it was revolutionary. In 1980s or 70s, this was developed further, and suddenly you still used screen, but you can see, for the first time, we have something similar to user interfaces as we know them these days. And this was developed at Xerox, and this is the user interface that Steve Jobs saw when he visited Xerox PARC Institute, and this is the interface he copied for Macintosh and Apple computers later on, just to fill in the history of the relationship between Xerox and Apple. When we move to recent history, of course the user interfaces changed again, and nowadays we use applications, we use interfaces to interface with the city, to interface with services that deliver to us food, and we can order a taxi, we can sort of order a place to stay when we are traveling abroad, which is something that we cannot do, unfortunately, these days much. But hopefully we will be able to travel again next year. Anyway, the point is that we moved from interacting with computers, from physical interaction, moving cables, to sitting at home, leisurely, and ordering food. And that's a big jump, obviously, if you see it from this historical perspective. And my point is that really interface has been the whole time a window, but the window to different things. At this era, it was a window to hardware of the computer. Again, hardware, but a slightly different interface. This was the interface window into your files, your pictures, the first documents, and so on and so forth. Even to printers, because you could connect for the first time via primitive, prehistoric internets to printers. But at this era, you can connect to something slightly different, to services, to things that you couldn't even imagine in the past, obviously. And last but not least, you can use interface literally to see the whole planet, which is if you go back to this era, it's crazy how things have developed. But I'm not joking. This is a big deal, because the interface, which is mostly the screen, but again, please think about interfaces as a map, as a window into something, which may or may not be just screen. Nowadays, we can see the whole planet thanks to technologies and interfaces. So that's more or less what Benjamin Britten, in a nutshell, in a very, I'm really simplifying what he has to say. What he says when he demands that we should, think about interfaces as a sort of map window onto invisible data, invisible things that we couldn't otherwise see. And not only that, interface is not a static window. It's an interactive window. So not only can we see things that we couldn't see previously, but we can also change what we see for the first time. So that's my idea of interface I also work with. And you may have read, or at least you've been sent the article Interfacing the City. Victor, have you sent the article to your students or not in the end?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. You didn't need to read it yet, but the point of the article is that once you start, conceptualizing the interface as a window into something that you cannot see otherwise, there is no reason why you couldn't think about interfaces of or into the city. And of course, you can do that only if you give up the idea of interface as a screen. And there are other, theoreticians who sort of, demand that we should give up the idea of interface as a screen because it really limits the way we can think about interfaces. And there is a great theoretician and media theorist, Shannon Mattern, and she is, really one of the best people to go to if you want to learn about how to conceptualize, how to think, how to be inspired by thinking about interfaces and, let's say, cities. There are a few historical examples which I mentioned in my article that I sort of understand as a proto-interfaces. John Snow in sort of 17th century, 18th century England, he was a doctor, and there was a problem in the city because there was an outbreak of cholera, and people didn't know, why it happens, and they didn't know why certain parts of the city, were much more destroyed and by the cholera than the other parts. And John Snow, as a doctor, had this brilliant idea that he will use the map of the city, and he will sort of, put points on the map where the outbreak of the cholera is strongest. And he realized that the strongest outbreak of the cholera is where these water pumps are. Meaning that, he connected the dots, and he realized that the water might be spoiled, and therefore people shouldn't use the water. And actually it did help manage the cholera, and they cleaned up the water, and everything was back to normal. The point is that without this map, without sort of abstracting the concrete world, he wouldn't be able to. He could, but this was a very easy way to sort of see the city in a completely different light and get new information of the city, and it even helped the people to survive, which is a big deal, in my opinion. Just thanks to using a map and using it as a sort of interface onto the city, interface onto the data, what happens in the city. Of course, in this era, data in a metaphorical sense. There is another way I use the idea of interface. Charles Marville, he was a famous photographer who sort of took pictures of Paris before it was redesigned, before the old parts of the city were destroyed and redesigned. And, to me, it's, again, a window into a historical past of the Paris that otherwise couldn't be seen right now. And this is my favorite example, and this is the last example I will mention during this lecture. It's a project, not the last example, there is one more, sorry. It's a project CyberSyn, and you may have heard about it, you may have not. The point is that during the 70s, there was a new government in Chile. There was a socialist government. And they, of course, as socialists, they wanted to switch to central planning of the society and economy. It doesn't matter right now if you agree with socialism or not, or you are a capitalist. That doesn't matter. But the point of this example is that they actually used technology to in the trial trying to manifest, to make the socialist economy possible. And they created this project called CyberSyn. And in 70s, they basically interconnected all companies together with very slow internet-like connections, and all this data from companies, of their productions, how many things they developed, and so on and so forth. All this data were connected to this central room where people and smart people were sitting, and they were trying to make decisions about the economy. The decision-making process was also helped with the primitive computer they used in 70s. And my point is that thanks to the interface, thanks to the technology, they could see the whole economy in a sort of, I mean, they could see the economy in a way. Otherwise, it's impossible to see the economy and the processes, what was happening in the society. Of course, it was in 70s, and the computers were extremely slow, networks were extremely slow, and of course the whole idea about central planning of your economy is, let's say, not so certain whether it works, even in theory. But just as an historical example of how interface, was used. I mean, the idea of interface as a window onto something was used in history. I found this example at least interesting. If you are interested in this idea, I definitely suggest that Googling it, looking at the Wikipedia, and there is actually a good book about the history of the whole project. And I mean, these people who worked on the CyberSyn, they weren't lightweights. I mean, Stanford Beer, who was an English cybernetist, he was invited to participate on this project in Chile, and at the time he was perhaps the most prominent cybernetist at the time. So if someone was able to do it, it was him.
Looks like some Star Trek movie or something.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. Just imagine, people sitting in this in this room and making decisions about the whole economy of Chile.
Yeah, V for Vendetta right there.
And okay, last example. This is a rather current, recent project. Lev Manovich is one of the biggest names in media theory. And he works. I mean, in the past he was into writing books about philosophy of media and theory of media, and in recent years he sort of shifted his attention to using data to learn about culture. And this is a project called Selfie City Project, and basically what he did was download Instagram photos from different cities, and then doing data analysis through machine learning and other tools to learn something about the cities through Instagram photos. And again, I do not have time to go through the paper he published, what they learned, but basically they learned a few things. For example, that in different cities there are differences in there are gender differences. How men and women use Instagram and selfies. So, for example, as you can see, hopefully you can see on your screens, in Moscow, the gender disparity, the gender difference between how people create or basically take pictures, take selfies, is the biggest. Whereas in, I don't know, Bangkok, surprisingly, it's not that different. In Berlin, there is a difference between genders, but in Moscow, the difference is largest. And they had some hypotheses about what they can find out, and I definitely suggest looking up this project, Selfie City, because to me at least, this is another way the way to conceptualize interface. Basically, we have this large amount of data, but we wouldn't be able to learn anything from the data themselves or itself unless we create visualization of the data, or, as I say, interface into the data. Yeah, so, and by the way, these selfies were taken while people were outside in the city. So they were not selfies taken at homes. Okay, so if there is a short summary regarding this idea of interface as a window onto various things, please do not think of interfaces only as screens. I mean, you can do that. It's a completely valid way of thinking about interface, but there are other ways which might be, inspiring to you in your future career, especially if you want to move sooner or later from just making applications and websites to, I don't know, making something for smart cities, let's say. And regarding smart cities, it's a concept where basically we can use digitalization of city to learn about data that cities produce. There's a large amount of data that cities produce, and you can use as well. You need an interface to learn about about the data. And specifically, if we talk about interfaces for smart cities, we talk about urban interfaces. Okay, and the very last thing I have prepared today for you, and it's again a slightly philosophical question or philosophical slide. There is this Catholic, deacon that works in Canada, and he suffered a brain injury. And his brain injury is similar to what the main character in the movie Memento experienced. If you know the movie, if not, the main character has a memory problem, and so he can remember everything that happened before the accident, but nothing after the accident. And the same mental, let's say, issue, memory issue, has this Patrick Jones, but he tries to do his best, and he's sort of known for being an example how technology can help you sort of survive, to overcome your problems. And he.
So wait, sorry if I can ask, like he cannot remember before the accident or the other way around?
After the accident, he cannot form new memories after the accident.
Damn. Okay.
It's a really nice movie, actually. I recommend.
Yeah, the movie is called Memento.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. That's cool. Okay.
Okay,
how can you live? It's crazy.
Well, it's crazy, but I mean, you can always give up and just say, well, it doesn't make sense living like that. But
memory.
It's very difficult. But he's a believing man, so
that's beautiful.
He has to struggle, and he struggles in this specific way. He uses his iPhone, and he uses this application called Evernote. Have you heard about it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and basically he functions this way. Every time someone comes to him, he has a discussion with the person. Let's say the person goes outside the room, I don't know, for a toilet, let's say. And Patrick Jones basically uses his iPhone. He writes down the notes about what they were talking about. And when the person comes back to the room, he doesn't recognize the person. But he checks his Evernote notes, and there is the name of the person, what they were talking about, and then he can continue the conversation, more or less.
Oh, okay. That's so abstract to think about.
Also, he had photos for that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's an interesting example how well-designed technology can really help people to live lives that they wouldn't otherwise be able to live or continue to live in a sort of more or less normal way. And my point is that, and perhaps that's a topic for another time. My point is, and that's a part of my research, that technologies are not really passive objects that lie, before us. At certain moments, they really become part of our mind, and they help us form memories, and they help us in thinking. And yeah, so if you're interested in this kind of reasoning, thinking about technologies, there are various books that you can read, or you can just contact me after the lecture, and we can talk about how technology extends our minds, and at certain moments it really becomes part of our mind.
Yeah, even bodies as well. Like I saw this
Exactly.
TEDx that had 2 legs, and
exactly
like they didn't have 2 legs, and he was just completely normal, even an extension.
Yeah, exactly. There are, of course, implants that you can put into your body and into your brain, and definitely.
Yeah, Elon Musk as well.
Sure. But the point of my research is that this is not new. This has been happening, since the prehistoric times, because even the very simple tools started to influence how we think and how we behave.
Writing, right?
Yeah, and there is this theory that thanks to using rock tablets, where we basically engrave the first information about how many pieces of cattle you have. Thanks to using these tablets, we actually develop the whole mathematics. But that's for different time, and I would be happy to talk about it next time if Victor invites me back again. But for today, that's what I have prepared for you. Hopefully, it was useful for you. And if you have any questions, please ask me. I will be happy to answer the questions. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you. It was really cool.
This is really
presentation.
Cool.
Yeah, wanted to tell you.
Well,
it was very interesting.
Thanks, and good to hear. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jakub. And do you've got any concrete questions? Just it can be from the fields of applied strategies of UX design or other visionary attitudes. You
I
can
have a bunch actually.
ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
So go on, guys. Nassim.
I would like to ask. So, did you hear about Elon Musk's link to the brain?
Oh yeah, I have. Sure.
What do you think would UX be at that point if we reach it? So
Yeah,
you would
I
have
similar thing.
some kind of. I mean, of course, it would take years to progress, but there would be some kind of link between the mind and the computer. Then how would that be developed, or what do you think of it?
Great question. Of course, it's a little bit speculative question, but I like speculation. I like speculative philosophy and speculative design. I'll try to answer this way. There have been prominent people who are into Bitcoin, who are into cryptocurrencies, and they said that the last frontier that really is necessary to go to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies really mainstream is to create good user experience. Meaning, for most people, it's too abstract. They cannot imagine how it works. They cannot imagine how it is useful for them. So there are really famous theoreticians of Bitcoin that say, well, we need to create good applications that sort of provide interesting, meaningful windows onto the whole Bitcoin infrastructure. And I really like this kind of reasoning, of course, as you can imagine. And I can answer in a similar terms, regarding your question with the link of this new project of Elon Musk. I believe that we will face the similar problem that until we have good interfaces that people can understand, that will reduce the whole complexity of the technology to something that even your mother, father can use on a daily basis. The technology cannot go mainstream. It will be a niche product for early adapters, for basically people, technologies, and so on and so forth.
You're actually describing pretty much what's happening with VR as well. It's the same problem.
Yeah,
like
it's
technology is there.
Yeah.
It's just people are not interested in the mainstream people, or bigger numbers cannot adapt so well. UX and UI.
Definitely, I think this is an issue that many very technically minded people have, because they seem to forget that technologies can become mainstream only if they really are amidst the other people in the society, and they really are part of the daily life of people. That's when technologies can go mainstream. And I mean, imagine iPhones, in 2007 at the very beginning. iPhone wasn't that mainstream, immediately after it was introduced, because it was, expensive, at the time, even at the time for phone, even though it was like $200. So, compared to
new experience.
Yeah, it was a new experience, and people just couldn't imagine, why should I use a smartphone? I have my own Nokia, I can call, I can send messages. But it was only after iPhone, got new applications, and there were new services, new platforms, then really people could imagine, okay, I need iPhone to, let's say, order from Amazon something like that, So it's extremely important not to avoid the question of society and culture when you are thinking about new products, because especially these times, theoreticians think about technologies as platforms. Platforms for something else. For example, let's say Dame Jidlo. You probably know the website, right? What it is? It's not product itself. It's a platform where other restaurants and cafes and bistros can. They can join the platform, and through the platform they can offer their services.
Yeah, that's true.
Dame Jidlo itself, it's just a website, a very good website. But what's more important about their product is, how they connect to different restaurants and bistros. So that's
how easy it is as well for the user.
Exactly. Yeah, so great question. I mean, that's in a nutshell. I think that the interface is really what stands between the technology and users. And if you have a great interface with that's easy to use and it's meaningful, also the idea of meaning is very important, because if people don't know what to do with that, you can spend millions of dollars on your product, but people will not use it.
Same as like the first computer as well, until Apple made like proper mouse support and clicking on icons that are like folders and trash cans.
Yeah, I mean that's really the power of interface in work. At the time, you may have seen these films and documentaries about Steve Jobs. So they struggle with Steve Wozniak. How techy, how technical the system should be. At the time, it was. Most computers were designed only for technologically minded people, but thanks to the user interface, it was the technology, it was the point that really made computers mainstream. Okay, thanks for the question. Yeah.
So what do you think about the future? I mean, now we have the.
Okay.
Now we are. This is just a intro.
It's a big question. Okay, I know. Sorry. Go on.
So because now we are like very stuck to the screens, we have all those applications with the interface that is made for the phones, for the screens, for the desktops. But what about now? I think in the future it will be more about linking the reality with the screen together. So now it will be about making the UX and the UI kind of like interfacing with the reality. And here what I'm trying to point out is the augmented reality, where actually now what will be, I think, like the trend is creating these shops, or maybe even IKEA is starting to do it in a way, is doing this interface for people in this augmented reality. And I would like to know what's your point of view on this effect that is happening, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I told you that the interface can be viewed as a map. And what is the best map of the world?
That's the question, exactly.
Well, the best map of the world is world itself.
Yes, it's your eye. I wanted to say your eye, human eye, like how you see
yeah,
it.
yeah, in a way, sure. I mean, you do not need to recreate the world if you can use the world, itself for whatever you want to do. And that's the strength of augmented reality, I think. And that's why I believe it's even more useful, at least, it seems to me right now, than the virtual reality. Because you can basically use what already is here, the world around us, and you can just, build or design new layers on top of the physical world. And you can mix them together. So you can, you can extend, augment the normal human capabilities thanks to, this new layer. And of course, it has a extremely big commercial, potential. As you said, IKEA is using that. And of course, there is this new LiDAR technology in new Apple devices, where basically it's basically designed for companies to think about ways to take advantage of this, LiDAR scanning, 3D scanning technology. So I believe that augmented reality, because of that, is a much more potent technology for near future.
So would you say that we should focus on this? But I mean, not mainly, obviously, but is it something that is like in 5 years it will be around us, or is it more that will take more time?
Well, there are, two sides of the coin. There is this technological side, which is coming to be more and more cheaper. I mean, cheaper and more widespread, at least thanks to Apple, if not anything. But of course, there is the other side of, really creating useful use cases, how to use the technology. So it's on the developers, on designers, on you, to really use the technology, the new technology, and imagine the new ways that you can help people to do interesting, useful things.
It's like the HoloLens is doing. I don't know if you know, or if you saw it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I really like how Microsoft is pushing this HoloLens and the augmented reality, into let's say universities. If you are studying medicine, you may have heard these videos, seen these videos where they are basically advertising that you do not need to have live corpses. You can just create this augmented reality corpses, and you can which are pretty real, and thanks to the headset you can see the body. You can put together and deconstruct the body to see the individual parts and so on and so forth. So yeah, I like it, and to me it's one of the more useful use cases.
Yeah, also targeting schools and such things, it will allow for people to like grow with it. So
yeah,
5, 10 years, everybody will.
Definitely. I mean, the VR is tough because you have to recreate the whole world, which, I mean, you can do that definitely. We have computer games, and I can imagine then that in 10 and 20 years, really there will be this merging together of augmented reality and virtual reality. Basically, your reality will be augmented by the virtual reality, in a way. So
scary in a way. I mean, it's
yeah, but
it's
yeah.
maybe scary for the people. Like people can get lost. But this is too philosophical, I guess. After like.
Well, it is, but at the same time, it's already happening. If you are playing World of Warcraft, I don't know, Sims and other things. I mean, I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing Diablo 2, the game, in the past. So I was pretty immersed in the virtual world of Diablo 2, and. It's already happening. It's not the question whether if it happens, but the question, when exactly the technology will be so sophisticated that you will not be able to distinguish the reality from the virtual reality. And I can imagine that people will choose, living in the virtual reality rather than the physical reality, because
most of them.
they will be masters of their own virtual lives. So yeah,
okay.
It's a big topic, and of course it's a philosophical speculation, but it's not that far away. I would say. Okay, any other questions?
Do you think what is most important to become a UX designer?
Good question, and I think question that I mean, my whole presentation was trying to sort of answer this question from different angles, obviously. But to summarize it even further, don't be so attached to applications, to technologies. Try to think about the why question, why you do things, and why your potential customers and users should use your ideas, your products. Which means that try to be involved in not only in design, because if you are a designer, you tend, especially if you work as a designer, you tend to be focused on how to do things, how to design things faster, how to use the graphical software better and faster, and so on and so forth. And I completely understand. I know I've been through that for many years. But once I shifted my attention to the why question, suddenly I started to realize, okay, if I want to answer the why question, I need to know more about people. I need to know more about society. I need to know more about culture, and so forth. And suddenly you see that it can lead you to being more involved in humanities, sociology, history, anthropology, and these are useful tools how to do user experience design, and also tools where you can derive your inspiration from. So hopefully it wasn't too abstract, but just be interested in anything else than just the design itself. I think to put it bluntly. Because in the end, the experience is not created just thanks to the technology itself. It's based on what kind of lives people live, what kind of lives people want to live, and where they live, what kind of problems they have. And if let's say, if you read articles about how the coronavirus crisis impacts people's lives, it can motivate you to sort of, design intervention, to provide better communication between, I don't know, your grandparents and kids, and so on and so forth. So, be involved in what's happening in society, and because it's a wealth of inspiration that you can implement in your UX design thinking. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just if there is no question, like more question, like I will put here like only my point of view, which is not kind of ending for the session, but we are out of the time, but still.
Sure.
There is the aspect of and augmented. Sorry. The aspect of the virtual reality and augmented reality, and even the, let's say, the tools or technologies, or being immersed in your field of progress, let's say, or in the virtual reality, immersed in the other worlds, and so on and so forth, or immersed in the real world, let's say, and that's the philosophical part of it. So this immersion it is giving us a very like huge field of the emotions, but then it is also making us blind to the things. So let's say that when, and we can be even immersed in the living reality. So let's say that I am how I am looking at this and these technologies of virtual reality or augmented reality, that let's say this technology can get us, let's say, a little bit out of the world, out of the normal style of the living, and then we can point on this normal state of the living from critical perspective. And that's the thing, or that's the advantage of the technologies from my point of view. And even that when Jakub was telling you about the being UX designer, just get out from this branch of design, to get out from this branch of the designing things with the tools of Illustrator, Figma, and whatever, and just go to the issues of the normal living, of normal to the issues of the human needs, human cultural things, and so on. I'm just thinking that it makes you artists from the kind of perspective that you are able to connect the links and linkings between different fields, which make the complex system which we are, let's say, the society.
Yeah, Victor, I completely agree, which leads me to just this slide. I'll just put it on the screen. Where is it? Let me see. Yeah, this one. And even though it's just a diagram, I really like it and sort of agree with it, that the user experience design is not necessarily anything new. In terms of, it's not necessarily a new field of design, but I would say it's a type of thinking. It's a mindset in a way, because for the first time, let's say when the UX design was developing and when Don Norman coined the term and explained what it means, for the first time, there was this emphasis of not doing, I don't know, audio design, interior design separately, but there was for the first time need to put it together, into one package in a way. And of course, it's a completely different mindset where you need to see things in a context and interconnected together. You as a UX designer, you more or less work together with graphic designers and, I don't know, even architects, even artists, and you sort of are this ambassador for making sure that the vision that you have is sort of it works together. Sometimes I also use this analogy of being as a conductor of an orchestra. That you need to govern, you need to make sure that each instrument is really part of the whole. It contributes to the whole. And I think that the UX design and UX designers are sort of conductors of this orchestra of we can call design team. Why not? Yeah. So sorry for jumping to your speech, but what you were talking about, it really reminded me this slide.
Yeah, for sure.
And perhaps the last thing I can add: be interested in humans, perhaps more than technologies themselves, because in the end, it's about humans. It's about users, not about the technology, which is important. Don't get me wrong, but I believe that you cannot be a good UX designer if you know nothing about humans, about culture and so on.
Yeah, what I love from this branch, it's that it is starting with the meeting with the client, and you're speaking about any concrete product you should develop, and then you will end up with something totally different, and that's very maybe connected to your answer or to your mentioning that this is getting you out from the product. This is getting you out from the technological solution, and it's getting you closer to the human and its needs. And then you could even figure out that it's the person's needs or the company's needs or whatever, that they are like completely different, and they are just they are like searching for effective way how to speak, and that's this speaking, that's also human behavior, and we are just only making the form for this speaking, and that's.
Yeah, well, regarding speech and speaking and articulating ideas and basically needs, I believe that a good UX designer is a good communicator. And to be, at least from my own practice, to be a good UX designer, you really sort of you really have to have this function as a sort of therapist, where you have a client sitting in front of you, and slowly you help the client to express the real needs, not the needs that he or she thinks, but the real needs that are really behind the motivations. And that's why I told you during the presentation that sometimes it does happen that the client comes to you and wants to redesign the website because the sales went down. But after a few minutes of discussing his business, you will realize that it's not the website; it's just the bad visual identity that he designed last month or something like that. It really is destroying the reputation of the whole business or something like that. So yeah, do not trust your clients that they know what they think they know, or that they know what's best for them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It's up to you, and more or less they expect you to know better than them. They have this motivations, reasons. They think okay, maybe it's this or that, but I'm not sure, and I'm coming to you as a UX designer to help me to get to the core of the problem of my business. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so any other questions, or should we just go to have lunch, for example?
Thank you. It was really cool.
Yeah,
sure.
it was
And
really
are
nice.
you based in Prague?
Yeah, I do teach summer or spring
right.
semesters in at Charles University. I live in Prague, but I travel each week to Pilsen for my classes and lectures.
Cool. Super.
Okay, so it's up to Victor if we can see each other again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just the biggest master,
Yeah, I'm very much consciously putting pressure on Victor to invite me back.
We want you back.
Yeah.
It's a pity that we got this opportunity for only
Yeah.
once per semester. Yeah, that's this our limitations. Otherwise, we could develop something.
Yeah, Victor, people have spoken.
See you next week then. Okay.
See you next week.
Yeah.
No. This Wednesday.
Yeah, this
Wednesday. Yeah.
It would be cool to try and do. I don't know if you have any events going in Prague. I mean, in normal times, not in Corona, but I guess I'm sure you
I mean,
some interesting lectures or something.
Yeah.
It would be really great to know about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a possibility. It's still very much in. Not sure. So I didn't want to spoil it. But there's a possibility. I may be sort of more. I may have more possibilities to give lectures. At Prague College. But let's see. Let's see. But I'm definitely grateful for Victor and for having me back and for just talking to you guys. I really enjoyed that, and yeah, hopefully we will see each other online, offline. Hopefully the whole coronavirus crisis will go away sooner or later, rather soon than later.
Definitely, just don't forget about us with kind of invitations on your actions or presentations. Like I know that they are from the different. Sometimes they are on the different fields and more philosophical and more maybe tough, but just don't forget about us and just send us the invitation.
Well, great. I mean, I teach the whole semester at Charles University at the New Media Studies, the spring semester, and I do believe that I start, from very practical examples and discussions about the UX design. Of course, at the end of the semester, I move to the waters of philosophy and speculations. But if you have the background, the previous, talks and discussions, I do believe that, it's understandable and it's useful even to go deeper into these philosophical speculations. And honestly, the lectures are open more or less to everyone, as it is, like a normal way of doing things at universities. If we happen to have these lectures physically in classes at class, I mean, you can come to lecture. If not, if the coronavirus is still with us, we will have the classes again online, and of course there are no restrictions of how many people can join us. I mean, there is like 300 people. I mean, that's the limit of my account of Zoom, but I'm not sure whether there will be 300 people. But
get sponsors by then.
I suppose so. Yeah. I could turn a YouTuber full time.
Yeah.
Twitch.
So thank you for the invitation, or a real invitation.
Yeah.
I will inform you. I will inform you about this lectures, for example.
Yeah, I can definitely send Victor the the information about the classes, and you can join us or not. It's up to you then, of course.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us. So
okay,
thank you for having you today, and it was like very, very pleasant and very like full of like new perspectives for us, and I'm just grateful for it. And thank you to the class. To class that you have come, and we were in the full amount of us here. I think one person missing maybe, but yes, so see you at Wednesday. Thank you very much, Jakub.
Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good luck and
have a nice day.
Oh, you too. Good luck with your further studies.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Okay, bye, and go